Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to Hendo's Hot Topics. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're loving yourself. Hope you're having a good week. Now it's been a long awaited time. I'm very glad we're here, but we have Georgie who is behind This Is Georgie. How's it going?
Really good, thank you. It has been a really long time,
Yeah.
hasn't it? It's been
Oh,
like over a year.
yeah, I was talking to my partner the other day, and we were meant to have this conversation. I think it was the Friday of the big lockdown.
Yeah, the lockdown.
And
Yeah,
then life's
yeah.
just been so busy.
I
But
know.
it's so nice that we finally be able to sit down.
Yeah, I'm so stoked we can finally make the time. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Now, I'd love to start off, and I want to ask you is how you doing in general?
Really good.
Yep.
I'm a little bit stressed from uni. So I'm in my first year of university and I'm currently in the uni holidays. So it's a bit up and down. I'm nearing the very end of my last, the last semester of my first year of uni. So it's a bit of a whirlwind, just juggling everything, but I'm really enjoying it and I'm really glad that I took that big deep dive going to university.
Nice.
Being someone who didn't finish high school. So, yeah, everything's been really well. Just like juggling, managing things.
Love that.
Yeah.
Juggling. That's interesting. Even for people in university, not in university at the moment, juggling life is hard. So how have you found balancing, studying for uni and getting that underway, and then your personal life?
Yeah, like social life and
Yeah.
then work on top of that. Everyone is so different. For me, I work every weekend,
Yep,
so
gotcha.
Saturday and Sunday, and then the only time I really get to socialize is on the afternoons and the afternoons,
Yep.
evenings, so like Friday afternoons. But I do start work really early, so like 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah, okay.
So it's like the big nights are not and not the go. Usually I'm always the sober driver. But yeah, it's just about making sure you get enough rest and keep the drive up, I think, for university. Obviously university comes first.
Yep.
So I do uni 4 days a week and just really smash it out during the day with as much study as I can. But I'm loving it, and I think that's what makes a huge difference with university is
Nice.
that I know that a lot of people do really struggle. It can be really mentally tough during a lot of times, but I've really enjoyed it. I've loved my first year of uni, and I'm really stoked about that because I was nervous going into it, and just taking time for yourself. My calendar is full like a month out because I need to know. I'm a planner, and I need to know what I'm doing and planning things around it. I'm not a very last minute person, so it's good to just understand what you need and what you need from mates and when you need to see mates, and just also having that social connection because studying can be so isolating as well.
Love that.
So yeah.
Are you glad that you took that leap of faith going to uni after gaining a bit of life experience?
Yes, so happy. Yeah, university was never something that I thought I would do.
Yep.
I left school when I was 15, so I was really young, and I really struggled in school. I went to Mount Albert Grammar, so it was a huge school, lots of academics and sporting kids. So you're surrounded by some incredible students, I have to say. But for me, school was a real struggle. So I actually would get up in the mornings, put my uniform on, catch the train all the way into town, into Britomart, and would work during the day when I was supposed to be at school, and I'd get home in time for dinner. And that went on for probably about a good 3 months before I actually said to my mum, I was like, I really can't do school anymore. I just was not concentrating in class. I just could not do any of my subjects. It was a huge struggle, and so Mum and I had a talk, and I was to continue work. So one day I just did make the decision to leave, and then I've just been working ever since, and I've worked for some incredible companies. I feel like I've been so lucky. I did when I left school, I was in retail, so it's just your, I guess, stock standard school job that you kind of get over the holidays, because I was a Christmas casual at Cotton On, and then I just stayed on full time and worked there for 3 years. And then decided that I would go and study travel and tourism because I loved travel. And Mum said, why don't you just go and see if you can get a certificate in that? So I went and did that and loved it. And then the job applications came out to work at Disney World in America when I was 19 or 18 at the time. And so I just applied for a job there and ended up getting it. So I moved to America when I was 19 and just stayed in the travel industry. And it was really when my dad passed away, when I was 23, that my whole, I guess, career change
Yep.
came about for what I actually wanted to do and what my passion was in life and where I wanted that to head. So yeah, I'm really, really glad, to answer your question, that I had some life experience before going to uni, because I feel so deeply that this degree is something that I really am supposed to be doing. You know, it wasn't like a rush after school, because so often we hear that. I even remember thinking, like, when I was in high school, having that worry or I remember the feeling of feeling overwhelmed because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure that gets put on students to be a certain person or no, you're so young. Like, I even think of the kids, at school now who are going through high school, and if there's anything that I can say to them, just ride the wave and know that it's okay if you don't have an idea of wanting to go to university. Go out and work, like, do something that makes you happy, like, bring in some money and just travel, go out and travel and just see the world. And some people do have an idea of what they want to do, and that's amazing. I've got a lot of friends who became nurses. I have a couple of friends who, you know, straight after high school, they went to law school and they love it and they're thriving now, and I love seeing them do that. But yeah, some kids just don't have that, and I feel like the rush is a problem in life, to feel rushed to do something when really, like, some people don't figure out what their passion or what their career is to be until they're in their 30s or 40s or 50. I mean,
100%.
look at Richard Branson. He did a really good interview on it. You know, he didn't figure out what his vision was until he was a lot older. So yeah, it's mind opening, I guess. Yeah, when I'm sitting in my class at university and I feel grounded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. It is really true what you're saying, especially in high school, the last year 11 up. That icing on the cake of teachers pounding on your door saying, pass this test to set up your future. You need to, if you want to get somewhere in life, you need to ace this test. It's a lot to take, especially when you're going through everything else as a teenager. Right? It's a lot on your plate. And when I've gone to the couple of high schools I've gone to, I've said, don't do something just because your friends are doing it. You know, I said, sorry teachers, but the truth is, when you say the best thing to do is go to university next year, it's really not. And I always make sure I say, even if it's kids in intermediate going to high school, is just live your life and let it happen. I have so many friends who have gone to uni now. We were saying before, is they're in uni, they're in their first year, they thought they were doing it, they thought they were doing it to do it for life, because they felt that's what they wanted to do in high school, because the teachers were telling them all that. Halfway through the first year, this isn't for me. But you're already stuck there, so now they're riding the wave when they're not actually enjoying it. Had a good friend, Finn, from LNAV, who said he did the same as you. He went back a little bit later in life after some life experience, and the papers become papers to pass, papers to learn, and not just papers to pass. You actually do the papers to learn what you're wanting to do. Definitely.
So you have a deeper connection with what is, being learned and being taught, I feel. Yeah. It's a lot different going back later, and I feel silly because when I'm 27, I just turned 27, and before I started university, I was putting on my Instagram stories question and answer boxes saying, you know, did you go back to uni later in life? And I felt like being 26 and going into uni was, you know, a mature student, and I guess in some ways, yes, I am, because kids go straight after high school, but there is a whole range of ages and people and different, you know, ethnics and diversity and all of the mixtures of amazing people that you sit in class with. You realize that it's not this like linear line that you have to follow to go into your career. There's mums in our class, you know, there's people from overseas who have come to study, and they're absolutely amazing, and I think to myself, what was I so worried about being 26 and going into university? So I absolutely love it. I feel like I'm in the place where I'm meant to be, and the reason why, what flipped a switch for me to go to university, is because I'm really goal driven, and I didn't realize that until it was actually my mum who wrote it on a birthday card to me once. She said, you follow your goals, and you know when you want something, and you'll go and try and smash that out. And it kind of got me thinking, actually, I really love to pursue what I want and to make, I guess, myself happy and goals in mind. So I had a huge career goal that I was aiming for, and it didn't work out for me, and I had tried and tried again to get where I needed to be in order for this door to open for my career, and it didn't work out. And so then that was just before the big lockdown, so the 3-month lockdown that we had here in Auckland. And it really got me thinking about who I was as a person and what I really wanted to achieve, and what was the other way that I could get those doors to open for a career that I really wanted, especially to help people in communities. So I'm really passionate about community organisations and the things that they do for others around them. I think that social connection is huge, especially for people who are going through the depths of despair of what they might be dealing with in their life, and to have an incredible community organisation to lean on is vital, I think. And so, yeah, the idea, I'm lucky enough to work with a lot of social workers. And so, yeah, it was in lockdown that I kind of got thinking. I was like, oh, we're nearing Christmas. It's kind of the end of the year. And I just thought, why don't I just go for a degree in social work and become a social worker? And it was a 4-year degree. And obviously being older, my partner and I, who I've been with now for 7 years, we were talking about buying a house and potentially moving to Christchurch. And with me going to uni, that all had to get put on hold. So we had a big chat, and I never get emotional and cry when I talk about things. And I remember sitting in the kitchen with him, and I just started crying and said, I really want to do this degree. I feel like it's the biggest shift for me, and I feel like it's just meant to be. And yeah, so happy. It's just, when you know something's right in your life that you're supposed to do.
It was your calling, eh?
Yes.
It was your calling. Yeah.
A deep calling to do it. Yeah, no, I love it, and it's nice. Yeah, it is nice going back or starting when you've seen things in life and you've gone through the motions of work already, because you learn a lot in the workplace.
100%. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Now, I love to talk about your page and what you do with your page. I came across your page pretty early on when I started the podcast, and I'll be honest, it was one of the pages and one of the spaces that actually helped me a lot with accepting what I'd been through and just dealing with it. And I think that's amazing, and I'd love to talk about This Is Georgie and what you do with your blog. So unfortunately, your father took his life when you were 23.
Yep.
And how close were you and your father?
So I'm the oldest of 3. So I have 2 younger siblings.
Yeah.
And so me and my dad were very close growing up until he got unwell, I would say. So being the oldest, I saw a lot and was lucky enough to experience, and my younger brother and I are 4 years apart. So for 4 years, first 4 years of my life, I was the only child, and I have so many fond memories of the 3 of us, him, my mum and myself. And we were a family that was super close, even when my siblings arrived, always travelling. So we were lucky enough to travel New Zealand with mum and dad a lot. They always installed a close sense of family and adventure within ourselves. So I was a kid who just over summer would grow up in campgrounds, we just explored, and we were lucky. They worked really hard. Mum and dad worked so hard to give us an incredible life where we could grow as our own person. And I'm lucky, and I feel lucky to say I didn't grow up with social media, and I know it's so different for kids nowadays. So I was very connected to my family. We grew up on a farm, and I still live on our family farm now with my partner. And so we're very lucky in that sense. And so had a really close bond with him, my mum and my siblings. And then dad got quite unwell probably when I was I actually don't know when it was that he started to get unwell, but he was unwell for 8 years before he passed away. So we backtrack. I'm really bad at math. So I was deep in school. So it was a time in my life where I was growing as a person, and everything was a bit confusing. And being the oldest child, you have this sense of, I guess, responsibility on yourself to lead the way for your younger siblings. And also, it's hard because I had this amazing relationship with him prior to him being unwell, and then it was kind of like his being unwell really consumed us as a family. So it's
Gotcha.
almost as though the relationships really got quite foggy, so they were up and down over that time. But in saying that, we still every single summer would go away as a family and do
Yep.
the things that we'd love to do. We were really lucky. Like we had so many amazing memories with each other, which I'm really thankful for. But with him being unwell, it was really confusing, and it's so hard to have a parent who is unwell, because during that time of growing up, you know, going through intermediate and high school, you're in a phase of your life as a child where you just need to be a child and you just need to be a kid, and it's a very sensitive time. I think that intermediate to high school transition phase as you grow. And so because there was so much going on at home with Dad, it almost took away my personality. I started to become more of, I guess, internally, going through the motions of whatever was going on, because it was confusing. And even talking about it is a bit hard, because it's hard to explain how it feels as a child to grow up with a parent who's unwell, because it is confusing. And I guess that's the biggest thing I would say, is that especially when back then mental health was not spoken about, it's not something that was widely talked about. We didn't have social media, so it's not, you know, like nowadays you see the incredible I Am Hope charity and what they do with Gumboot Friday, and the resources they're putting out there for parents with youth is amazing. You just can't fault what they're doing for families, and that's so vital. Whereas when I was a kid growing up, we just didn't have that. You know, we didn't have the connection through social media. It was only what you'd spoke about with your neighbours or your very close friends, and we never told anyone that Dad was unwell. So no one knew what we were going through. So I would have a really intense school day and then come home and things would be hard at home. So it was this cycle for 8 years that was just, you're trying to grow and be a person. And I think that's why I found school so difficult, because I couldn't concentrate and couldn't do the things that I wanted to. I had very high anxiety. As a kid, I felt so shaky in myself. And so it was hard having him unwell, because our relationship almost shattered to the point where I didn't know who he was as a person, and he almost didn't know who I was as a child, if that makes sense. So super difficult.
Was it growing up in your household? You said you guys were a real tight family with travelling, and I understand they're not growing up with social media, that sort of aspect there. Was it an environment where you could speak about how you're feeling?
No.
Or would that add to the confusion of, you know, you're seeing your father unwell, and you're trying to figure yourself out as your own person, and then trying to question why Dad's like that? Was that another aspect to it?
Yeah. So it was very internalized. My mum and my dad have been together, so they would have been together for 27 years this year, and so very close relationship, built, you know, an incredible life for themselves and for us as children as well, which we're so thankful for. But at the same time, the communication was lacking a lot. When you think of, if someone in your family is going through something, you sit down and chat about it, and there was never that conversation. Gotcha. So very confusing time. And when it was 7 years ago, so I would have been maybe 20 or 19. I must have just turned 20 at the time. So Dad had attempted to take his life, and so he was put in hospital, and that at that time, that's when he said to us from his own words how unwell he was. And I have a feeling that might have been the first time my brother and sister had heard that as well. So it was very difficult to go through years and years of up and down, and I guess mood changes, and him leaving to potentially go into care or with mental health services, and not understand what was going on. But I think at the same time, we didn't have support. There was no support. You know, you go into a mental health service or you go into a therapist and something happens, yet you come home and it's an unspoken thing within your household. So yeah, very hard, confusing, emotional time for all of us going through that, with him being unwell and it not being spoken about. We actually, it's 4 years of him passing away on the 15th of October.
Yep.
So that's coming up very soon. And we all sat down as a family and talked about everything for the first time ever only a couple of months ago. So we had not spoken about it for years, and even after he passed away, we never sat down and talked about how we were feeling as individuals. And I think back to when Dad was unwell and me being a child, I wish that we had sat down, and I wish there was someone to advocate for us and say, this is what's happening with Dad, you know, this is what happens when you're mentally unwell, and these are the kind of emotions that you can feel, and this is what we should do when he is maybe feeling like he needs space. But there was none of that. So it was, for a long time, it was very up and down. And I know that there's hundreds and thousands of families that are the same. So I know that we're not the only ones that have been through it. But the heartbreaking thing is that it ended with him passing away by suicide. So that's why I really wanted to talk about grief and what it meant to lose someone so significant in your life. As a child, losing a parent to suicide, what that grief was like, and what it was for us to go through that, because it was horrific. It was the worst grief, and still is the worst grief to go through. So there was a lot there. Yeah.
I would love to ask is, what helps you going through, well, what helps you push through those days where you may be questioning a lot of things, trying to answer these unanswered questions? What is it that helps you get through those days?
I think for me, before Dad passed away, I would say that I wasn't very self-aware of how I felt in my emotions on a daily basis. And I think as humans, we go through so many different emotions on a daily basis, and a lot of us don't actually know how to tackle them or view them head on within ourselves. And I think when Dad passed away, within my grief, you go through so many emotions with grief. It's unbelievable what you can feel day to day. And I really wanted to deep dive into what that meant for me and how to help myself. So 4 years on from him passing away now, I'm very protective of who I spend my time with. And how I guess
put yourself out there.
And who comes into my space, and who I spend my time with, and how I give back to myself. I think that's become really important, and especially being at university, I don't have a lot of time to be social, and you know, work is a lot different. So because I am part-time, so I'm not in that work setting and just social setting with family. It's like I've got so many different things to tackle, and so I'm very protective of how I take care of myself and who's in my space. Like, that's so important, because I know this quote, and it says, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And I think that is, if we understand that, you can really kind of like have a better outlook on what might be affecting you in your space if you're a very social person. So for me, like, I need to be with people who fill my cup up, and I just love, like, I've never really been like this social butterfly, but the more I spend time with people who I love and I adore, the more I want to be around them, which is weird for me to say, because I've always enjoyed time by myself. But also, I really like reading. So I feel like you need a hobby. I love reading. I love baking. Sam and I have a dog. He's a Labrador, and he's nuts. So going for walks with him, going to the beach. We're lucky we live by Piha, which is so beautiful. So going for walks there. And on the days that feel really heavy with grief, because there's days that just feel so heartbreaking that you cannot comprehend your emotions, and you almost like can't see the next day. Like, it's hard to explain, but you get so overloaded with these deep feelings of just sorrow, is what I would call it, and then you really have to just understand that you can just sit in it, just be in it and sit in it, and it's okay to feel like that. And if that means, taking a sick day off work, like if you are someone who's going through grief, just taking time for yourself and knowing that it's okay. And I think we're in this era of time where we almost feel like we have to push through everything and keep
100%.
going. And to sit in it, to understand, to feel it is probably, I think, one of the best things you can do in grief, because you learn to accept that you're human and you're allowed to feel those emotions. And I think the more we bury them, the worse it becomes. And from a very early point after Dad passing away, I really tried to accept that, and I think that's helped a lot with future grief.
Yep.
I would say. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think the question I'm going to ask is a very beautiful question. I really wanted to ask you. I haven't asked anyone this yet. I want to save it. Is how did you truly feel? How did you truly feel? I've asked someone how they felt, but I want to ask you how you truly felt. If you can recall, the first time that you actually spoke out and said that you were going through something, or you were feeling overwhelmed or really anxious or really upset, how did you feel after that? Because I feel like that's a huge wall to break down for so many people, was that first step of just asking for help.
Yeah, it's just getting over that hurdle, right? Like when you feel, because sometimes it's not just feeling a little bit overwhelmed.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Speaking about it for the first time, a lot of us will wait until it snowballs so much that you get such bad anxiety that the thought of even telling someone is like, no, like it's too much. I just can't get over that. And I think for me, like if things are overwhelming, I have like a 12-hour, I guess, notion that I go through. It's like, what do you need to do in the next 12 hours to get to the point where you feel like a little bit less overwhelmed? Is it that if it's the washing piling up, let's just give that as an example. The dishes are crazy, like your house is a mess. Do you live with family? Can you like go and talk to family, just say, I need to just do this? Or if work's overloaded and you need to get work stuff done for the next day, but then you come home and the house is a mess. It's just delegating stuff to the point where you feel a little less weighted. And it's the same with your emotions, and it depends where you are, because obviously school's a lot different to how we handle stress, and university and work and being parents as well. Like I can't speak for that because I don't have kids of myself, and it's so different for mums and dads. But just knowing that you have a person that you can just chat to, and I think once you get over that hurdle, it's a lot easier. And I promise you that, because I have had so many times in grief where I have been so stuck that I literally cannot get out of my bed.
Yep.
And I'm very lucky that I have Sam, but he has always been the one where it's almost like you have that care and protection over someone, him for me, that has allowed me to be so vulnerable in a place that is deeply hurtful.
Is that because in a sense you feel accepted for feeling?
Yes. Yeah. And finding a person who you can trust, that it's not essentially giving them all of your burdens. I mean, it kind of is, because you're talking to them about it, but it's just to share and be able to share, and knowing that sharing is one of the best things that you can do in a place where you are overwhelmed. Because I love talking to my friends. I have people who are younger than me. I have, mums. I love talking to mums. I love talking to kids just out of high school, especially in a university setting. If I'm overwhelmed, if you can talk to different people often have places of strength that they pull from to give to you, and you might not have seen it from their perspective, but it can give you a perspective of clarity when you haven't been able to see what can be for so long. I think that's really important. And in a work setting, it's, maybe it's just sitting down, talking to the boss and saying, I'm really overwhelmed. Like I cannot do this. I'm going to have a breakdown. And sometimes it just does get to that point. Like sometimes you just hit that wall and you do just shatter, and it's okay, but just talk about it. Because if there's anything that I've learned with losing Dad is that suicide happens so fast. It happens so quickly, and it can be a split second of someone thinking this is too much, and they feel like they have no one to talk to, and then they decide that, or their mental health talks to them and says, taking your own life is the only option, which is so heartbreaking, because that overwhelming feeling just blocks our, seeing the future and what can be. So the first time you talk to someone and talk about what's going on could save your life.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's also, I had an experience back in high school. I was talking to a friend about what I was going through with my father, and then he was telling me what he was going through. And since that day, I try to preach as much as I can. It's pretty much what you just said then, is not only will speaking out help yourself, but you might just help the person you're speaking to. Like you could be best friends with someone for 5, 10 years, 2 years, however long it is. See each other every weekend, sit with them for 4 or 5 hours, and until you speak out, that whole time they could have been going through the same thing as you. And all it takes for you is to go, I'm feeling shit today, eh? Well, you're right, you look a bit down. As easy as that. Could be a text in the morning, hey, how's it going, mate? Have a good day, everything's alright, chat if you need. It's just that reassurance that someone actually cares about you.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to, maybe it's a burden from your childhood, or confusion from your childhood leading into adulthood, of having all these unanswered questions, and not having that reassurance of no one being there for you is the biggest thing that I've found for a lot of people I've spoken to and personal experiences. But there's so many people there for you. It gets to the point where even you feel like your parents don't love you, and your family doesn't love you, but they do. And that wall that you were speaking about, that mental wall of you're not good enough, just do it. There's no point living. It really does, and it might be hard for a lot of people to understand it, but it really does block out your sense of life, and it makes you forget the basics and the simple things in life that can just bring you joy. Yeah. Like you said, doing the washing, doing the dishes, putting on a clean pair of underwear, just the little things. It makes life seem so narrow. Yeah. So as simple as saying, how are you? Or, hey, you look good today. Just something so little can, like you said, save someone's life. Yeah. And it's such an important thing that I feel gets looked over so much, because it's so simple and easy. Yeah. So leading from that is the amazing work you're doing now, and have been doing for a wee while now with This Is Georgie, and it's even more amazing the fact that you just spoke about before, saying growing up, in your household, it wasn't really a thing to say how you're doing mentally. But what you're doing now with helping so many people around the nation and overseas as well, most likely, with coming to terms with feeling sad, feeling anxious, feeling depressed, feeling not okay on days, and it's okay not to be okay. How has that been as I'm trying to say, how have you grown into that person as an individual, going from someone who's was lacking self-awareness and struggling to express how they're feeling, to losing your father and that grief that came onto you, to now helping so many people and putting out your knowledge from what you've gained?
It's such a big thing, because I look back on the last 4 years and it's gone so fast since Dad passed away. I think it obviously, when you go through something traumatic, it feels like yesterday that it happened, and it probably will forever feel like that. But when you look back and think about how much you've grown since that turning point in your life, it's actually unbelievable how much we can do as humans when you go through something that's horrific and you think that is life-shattering, which it was, but the strength within us, like when you find it, it's actually unbelievable. And it's only recently that I've kind of looked back on that and thought, you have just kept going over a time where it literally could have stopped your entire life, and it has at times. At times I've really had to stop and think to myself, what on earth am I doing? Am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough? Is it good enough? Is it not good enough? And I think I can be proud of the most the biggest thing I can be proud of is that the entire time I've just been myself, and I've been who I am, and I am who I am now as the same as I am home. I'm the same with my friends. Who I am online in that space, and the things that I write and the things that I put out is just things that it's just me, and that's something that my friends know as well. And I'm so lucky to have such incredible friends. I feel so blessed in that sense that through the last 4 years there have been times where they have just carried me through what has been really, really difficult days. Like social events were hard, going to barbecues in the early days, and I'd always turn up and they'd say, oh, we're so proud of you, you're doing an amazing job. And to hear that from your mates is actually so important. And every year we go to Whangamata as friends together over the Auckland anniversary, and it's such a special time for us because we have so much fun. But this anniversary weekend that just passed, we were sitting down one night and we just cried. Like, I know it sounds so emotional, but we just got so emotional because we are so lucky to have incredible people around us, and I only wish that on others to know that you can have these amazing pillars of support. And the people who have surrounded me over the last 4 years have really got me through that phase in my life, or one of the hardest times that I've probably, hopefully, will ever have to go through. But in saying that, when I look back, the reason why I have been able to get to this point is because I put myself out there, and I really stepped into so many zones that were really uncomfortable. Because when I say I didn't stop, I really didn't stop. I just kept going, but I also grieved heavily at the same time. But I never swept it under the rug. I grieved when I needed to. I worked hard, and I tried to be as self-aware as I could from that. And over the last few years, I've been so lucky to meet some incredible people, and people who have also lost their loved ones, and who have turned around and thanked me for talking about such an ugly grief that so many of us have been through, and have felt like we can't talk about it because of the stigma that comes from suicide. And that was the reason why I decided to put it on social media, because I was just being me, and it was just on my personal Instagram, and it always has been. I've never changed it to something else, but I just started posting about what I was going through and the grief that was consuming me on a daily basis. And it was just about that shattering, those emotions that I was trying to deal with after Dad passed away. Because when we were organising his funeral or his memorial, people came up to us or called us on the phone or either in person and said, I wish that I had known that he was sick, and I didn't know how unwell he was. And that was so hard for us to hear as kids, because it was my brother and I who did a lot. We told a lot of his friends. My mum actually had a heart attack the night he passed away, and so she was in hospital for that week, which is usually the week where you get things organised for funerals. And it was just a whirlwind of things we had to get sorted. And so it was my brother and I who was calling many of our friends and family, and they turned around saying, I wish we'd knew that he was unwell. We didn't realize he was so sick. And people would write it in the cards as well that they would give us with, their gifts that they would bring us. And that was so hard, because you only do the best that you can with what you have at the time, and that's all we ever did. And as a kid, when I look back, I was just a kid. And even though I was 23 when he passed away, I was still his child, and I was still a child when he was unwell growing up. So I was in that mindset of just feeling so small in that moment and not supported, which was really hard because we had kept it quiet for 8 years, and that's a long time to go through what we went through within the four walls of our home. It's so hard, and you lose a sense of yourself. So when he passed away, I literally Googled the day after, I think, I was sitting there just before going to the hospital to see mum, and I googled people who had lost their dads to suicide, and it was all these like professionally written blogs from psychologists, and that was great, but I wanted to know like who around me had lost a parent and was feeling like this, because it's so bad. Like, people just don't realize how quiet you can keep mental health, and then as soon as they pass away, it's like, oh, we're here for you, we wish we knew, and like, this is what we can do for you. And I just wanted to shake and say, I don't know what to tell you, because I didn't,
too late.
And I didn't know myself being a child, and especially with my siblings, and my mum just held on to that hope for so long that he would get better. And so the day he died it was really obviously traumatic, because I was there, and awful. And then the days after, you just question so many things, and you're a new person. Trauma just like changes you. And there was a close friend who saw me not long after he passed away, and she sat with me, and she had been through a lot herself. And the one thing she said to me, which actually helped me so much, was she said, your trauma, like what you've been through with him passing away, doesn't define who you are. She said it will consume you. You're going to be so hurt and grieving unimaginably because of this loss, but your trauma doesn't consume you, and your anxiety can't consume you. She said, don't let your fear consume you from what's happened. And so I've always held on to that. And you look back and I just think, how on earth did we get through that? Because it was so hard. And the only reason we got through it is because we had people to lean on.
Yep.
And I only wish it was the same when he was here, because you can't turn back time. But I just hope that by sharing my grief and what I've come to learn personally can help others. And there was actually a beautiful girl who followed me, and I think she still does. I haven't messaged her in a while, but she told me that her dad was struggling, and I wrote him a letter, and he wrote me an email back, and it was just really lovely, because you just wouldn't have that connection otherwise. And it's strangers, like, social media gets a lot of hate, but I'm very thankful that I have an incredibly, I would say 90% of the time, positive interaction with people who follow me, because I genuinely love their support. I feel so lucky, and what I've learned from them as well. I feel like we're just a little community, which we are. Like, they're so nice. I just feel, I'm just so lucky. Just built I've just been me. I've just been myself, and I've just shared, what I need. And I had one post that went viral, which was my Dear Jacinda.
Yes.
I wrote to Jacinda, and I'm pretty sure I came home from work that day. I sat on my couch, and I felt so hurt for these youth that were going through school and couldn't have support. And I thought of my dad and what he would have gone through growing up, and obviously what led to him taking his own life. And I wrote that in a couple of minutes, and I remember I didn't even usually, like, I'm sure people proofread their posts, but I wrote it so quickly on my notes, and I copied and I pasted it, and I just put it on Instagram, and I left it. And then I woke up because I'd been watching it and I knew that it was getting a lot of attention, but I woke up the next morning, and I'm like, thousands of people had followed me, had messaged me, I had hundreds of messages. People found my email address, they were emailing me, and I was so overwhelmed. And it obviously hit a chord with people, because I was talking about my dad who had passed away, but also backtracking to, if you don't help these kids, they will end up like my dad. 100%. And it's so sad, and they need that support. So I love Gumboot Friday. I think if you can raise some money for them, this Gumboot Friday, just go for gold, because those youth need that help. And if they don't get it, it's it's just constant intergenerational trauma, isn't it? Like when it just goes on and on and on for families, and you hear of these families who have lost not one but multiple people to suicide, and I just can't even imagine like what they go through. So yeah.
And that's the powerful thing about that post. I remember we spoke a lot around that time when you did that post, and because that was a couple of months after Gumboot Friday, which is when we first connected. When I did that with Mike King around the domain.
Yeah, that's right.
It was around then, and the real beautiful thing about that post was how it was directed at Jacinda, and I feel like especially the last recent years in New Zealand is with mental health and with suicide, and because New Zealand's, you may not know this, but New Zealand is one of the biggest countries in Oceania for youth suicide, and I've said it many times, and the government, whoever it is, always leaves it too late until that person becomes a statistic. Only when they become a statistic does it seem like there's care around it. Oh, wish we did something. And exactly like you said, why didn't you do something? You know, why are you waiting until they become another number, or another number in our percentage of youth that take their lives because they have no one there? I mean, there's kids as young as 6 taking their lives in New Zealand, like 6 years old. They feel like they have no one. Why do we not have someone that these kids can just go cry to, can just vouch out to? Why are they having to go hide in their rooms from their parents, or even if they are trying to get help, have to wait 4-6 months for help? Like, why? There's so many people like I'm Hope and other foundations trying to make that change, and the frustrating and I always find myself getting emotional about it. The frustrating thing about it is there's so much going towards it to make that change, but nothing seems to be happening on the other end. You know, it's always, you always see in the news another kid and another parent's taking their life, and why is has nothing happened? Then you hear for a week that an article gets released, wait time on counselling and therapists for 15 and under is going to get shortened, but nothing happens. It just seems like it's another press release to make everyone happy, but then nothing happens until someone else becomes a statistic. And that's the freaking heartbreaking thing. And I try not to talk about it too much because I get so worked up about it, because we've too many young people and older people taking their lives in New Zealand, in Australia, in Oceania, because they feel there's no help. When there's help, but nothing gets done about it. We have help. It's not being pushed. It's not being directed to the people that need it, and when the people that need it try to get the help, they're pushed away, and that's when they get breaking point. Because it's those people are taking a risk in themselves trying to get help, but then they've struggled so long to get help, and then they feel like that when they've reached out for help that they can't get help.
And often, you'll have people who will attempt multiple times, like my dad, and when he did attempt, when I started dating my partner, he did go to hospital, and when we went, he was in hospital for a couple of days, and then they sent him home, and I look back on that time, I think, how on earth did we have no one that came to talk to us, no one at the hospital? We only had a doctor who assessed him there, but I just find that unbelievable that you can be so close to death, and then you go home, and again, we never talked about that in depth as a family about what happened. And so on the day that he passed away, it's like the earth fell beneath my feet, because I just couldn't believe it. Like, it happened so fast, and it's happening to so many families, and often these kids just want someone to talk to, and it's hard to get professional help, but when you've got that in place and they have the access, it will change their life. And it might be that point in time, no matter how old they are, that they just need someone to talk to. And it could be those minutes that save their life. And a future of feeling like they're a burden, which they're definitely not. It's difficult to hear about another kid taking their life, because it's heartbreaking. They haven't lived, essentially. It's really sad. Yeah.
And it's the other amazing thing with what you do is, in a sense, to all these young girls, young boys, that girl who reached out to you when you end up emailing her dad, is that with what you've gone through, you're being the person to a lot of this younger generation, older generation, that you may sometimes wish that you had when you're going through what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the impact that can have on people, and has on people, is it takes you off guard sometimes,
Yeah.
to think that something that really hurts you so much can sometimes be such a beautiful flower that's blossomed into something amazing.
Yeah.
Because now you're able to help these people, being like, hey, I've gone through this.
Mm.
I truly know what you're going through and what you've been through. There's someone here for you.
Yeah.
You're not alone in this.
Definitely not. And I have so many people and I have to be really careful because it's really touchy, you know, with what, I'm not obviously a professional, and people know that. And often when they message me, it's that quick connection with someone that they know who has been through something similar to what they've been through, and they just want to be heard.
100%.
And they often don't have people in their lives that know what's going on. And I always, for every person that messages me saying that they can't talk to someone, I said, have you tried? Have you tried talking to someone that you love, whether it be your parents or your partner or school teacher or mentor? Have you tried talking to them? Just be brave in that moment. And it might not be you that's going through the hard time. It might be, someone that you love, but you're suffering from it, and you feel like you can't talk to someone. And when I look back on what we went through as a family, just find someone that you can lean on, because it takes a village when someone is unwell. It really does, and you can't do it by yourself, especially if you have young kids, if you're a young family, if your partner is suffering through something so deeply with their mental health, and you're doing this by yourself with these children. You need someone to come in and say, I'll do this for you today, I'll be able to help. I can make you a meal, or I can take the kids out for a couple of hours while you guys, might be going to a doctor's appointment without the noise of the kids there. It's just all of these little things that you really, really need to understand in order to see a lot clearer. And a lot of people, don't have that. And we didn't have it when Dad was unwell. And I wish that we did, because I know it would have made the world of difference seeing how many people were at his memorial, and just their faces. Definitely. It was really, really heartbreaking and really sad to see all of his mates there, and people who you don't expect to be touched by it. Like he was so involved in community events. The girls from our local pony club did a beautiful speech at his memorial, and a couple of them broke down, and it was sad to see how he touched their lives, just being what might have been a mentor for them when they might have not felt like they had someone, or just things like that. And so that's why I really just preach it. Just have your people that you can talk to, because we all go through shit times. It's not, it shouldn't be hidden, and there's always someone that will be able to listen to what you're going through. They might not give you the best advice, I'll say that, but there will be someone who will listen, and it's listening what can change the game for feeling like you're the only one.
Because as you said before, they just want to be heard.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now,
definitely.
I'd love to hand it over to you now. I'd love you to say anything. Could be maybe even to your partner, to your siblings, to yourself to look back on in the future. Might be something that you feel needs to be heard. That you feel needs to be said and heard by someone going through something.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be anything.
If I could say anything to anyone going through something, it is that if you're feeling overwhelmed and you feel like you don't have a place of where you're supposed to be, or you feel like you're not living up to what you think is your full potential, know that that's okay, and there will be a time where you can get to that place, and it's by growing and talking and sharing and connecting with people and just living in the moment. And that's what grief has taught me, is to live slowly, to enjoy the little things and to not get too caught up on the big things, because before we lost Dad, for so long I felt like I wasn't in the right place.
Yep.
And it wasn't until after, when we lost him, when you go through some of the worst things in your life, it sometimes makes you realize that life gives you like the worst tragedies in order to see what is really actually beautiful. And I find that a lot through my grief, is that by going through this hurtful time and period in my life, it's made me realize what is good and what is meant to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, and to the kids, to school kids, if I could say anything to them, it's just, don't put any pressure on yourself. Just, you're so young, just have fun, just be happy, just know what you're doing. If it makes you happy, then that is the one of the best things, because I just don't think there should be any pressure on yourself to feel like you need to live up to an expectation that isn't really there in the first place.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Beautiful. Well said.
Thanks.
That was really good. That is what
deep.
needs to be heard, though. It's just, live your life. Live your life. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
So, thank you for coming on, having this amazing
Thank
chat.
you.
I really appreciate it.
We finally got there.
Yeah, finally got there, and it was well worth the wait. It was well worth it.
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Now, I love you guys, and you know that there's no silly question in the world. If there's something you can take away from this chat, I'd really love if you let Georgie or myself know. And if there's anything, it's just to realise that it's okay not to be okay. If you need help, ask. There's nothing stupid, and you may not realise it, but you going out and risking, asking for help and feeling shy about that may encourage your friends or those around you to do the same, and you may save a life and not only help yourself. As always, do what makes you happy, do what you know is right, and do what you need to do for yourself. Have an amazing week. Continue to love yourself, take the risk and lose a chance, and just live your life. See you later.